thanks for coming on. I just wanted to welcome you to the Wild Heart Athletics podcast and appreciate you taking some time to talk to us today. And I'd love for you just to kind of introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Ben. I'm really excited to be here. And wife to my college sweetheart from culinary school. And
That's awesome.
yeah, I am an
Can't
active
wait to dive on
paraclimber,
in. And kind of my first question for you is really,
climbing
what's your
indoor,
favorite part
outdoor,
both
pretty much
about
any
rock
chance I
climbing
can
and
get
yoga?
on a
And how do you
wall
think
or
those
on a rock.
activities complement one another?
Um, Very interwoven. I feel like the movement and the body control um, in both practices complement each other very well. And I feel like when you're on a rock, the most important thing you can do, or on a wall in a competition, is breathe. And I feel like in a yoga studio, or at least in community where breath is the foundation and focus, that's where we hone those practices. Where out in the world we're tested. Our anxiety and our nervous system is at its peak, and we're kind of in fight or flight mode, and we're trying to get to the top of something, or even on like a big hike, trying to get to the summit. Your breath is fueling you. It's what's carrying your body and giving your muscles energy and love. And so the more control we have of that, and the more supported we feel in that part of our body, I think is something that is incredible and huge and powerful in both practices, climbing and yoga. And I didn't really find either one of those in my life until after I lost my hand, which is really interesting, because I just kind of wonder what my what the status of my system was before that. And I'm really grateful for both things, in the way they challenge me and in the way they pacify my needs.
So, what kind of impact have they had on your life?
I think they both gave me life. Yoga was something that came into my world as part of recovery, as a way to challenge my body when um, rigorous physical movement wasn't really an option. I was pregnant and, again, still recovering and kind of fresh out of being in a fragile state. And so yoga was medicine to my body, but it was also very challenging because just moving my body, everything had to be adapted and everything was different, which was incredibly frustrating, but also humbling and taught me so many things. And I'm so grateful for the challenge of kind of learning to move my body again, and the relationship that I have with myself now because of it.
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed with climbing is like, you mentioned the relationship you build with yourself. And I think that's very important, especially when it comes to like the internal factors. I've talked to a lot of climbers, and their thing is like it's all about the internal validation they get from individual performance. It's like it's not about trying to be the best. It's like how can they be the best version of themselves? And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. How can you challenge yourself the most? Yes, sometimes in competition you're climbing against other people, but really the true challenge is overcoming individual goals. And yeah, the same with yoga. It's not always about how can you get into an arm balance or a handstand or whatever. It's about, can you control your breath? Can you be by yourself in soft movement or quiet movement, and still feel at home in your body? So yeah, very impactful.
So when it comes to training, because you mentioned, you're a paraclimber and stuff like that, and you climb both indoor and outdoor, what's kind of your like training mentality or training regimen that you usually do kind of on like a weekly basis?
So I try to get to the gym to train at least 3 to 4 days a week. Sometimes that's more of a challenge than others. I have two young kids, which you can probably see in the background of my recording right now. Um, and we're actually headed to Richmond right now as a family, to do some climbing at my home gym. But I have a coach, who comes to this gym and volunteers his time. And we're actually have he has built an incredible adaptive climbing program at this gym where there once was not a home for adaptive climbers here, and there actually really aren't very many locally or close. So we have climbers that come from 2 hours away, an hour and a half away, and we try to have climb nights regularly through a couple of different organizations. But as far as training for myself personally, I'm trying to get to the gym, especially now, kind of in peak of season and gearing up for really big future endeavors in the climbing world. I am trying to get to the gym 3 to 4 days a week. And when I get there, I try to do some strength training as well as multiple different facets of climbing. So bouldering and then top rope or lead climbing. Um, and I'm really starting to come into my own as far as strength training with different adaptive devices. Right now, I use something called Active Hands, which are really cool. They're different adaptive grips that are Velcro adhered or have a hook on the end, or just different ways for people adaptively to do more upper body, um, yeah, muscle building, strength training sort of things. So I'm really grateful for that. It's given me the ability to row again on a rowing machine, which is incredible. And yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I saw you a video of you rowing for the first time with those adaptive hands on your Instagram. I was like, that's so awesome that they, things like that are being created, which I think is really unique to have that. And then, like you said, you get into strength training. And have you noticed that like strength training has contributed to your climbing?
Absolutely. The stronger I feel in my core and in my chest and my arms, the easier it is for me to um, actually to focus on footwork and things like that, because I'm focusing less on the work of my upper body, and it feels more fluid and more active and energized. And I feel like the strongest version of myself that I have been in a really long time, which feels awesome, very empowering.
So something I've noticed with climbers, and this I've noticed it with myself too, is sometimes when it comes to training, right? A lot of people love climbing because it's fun, it's enjoyable. You have the community aspect, which is kind of the biggest factor for me and why I enjoy climbing and stick with it. But how do you kind of balance the mentality you need for when it comes to training versus the mentality you need when you want to just enjoy the climb, have a good time, and have that community? Because you mentioned that you guys do have a great adaptive community at the gym that's growing and growing, which is incredible to hear.
Yeah, so I think balance is everything. And when you have balance in a hobby or a passion, it helps to create mindset that is healthy. And um, I think I think that that's actually the most important part of enjoying something, but also being able to challenge yourself and take it to the next level and compete or facilitate yourself at high level things is an executive mind control where there's always growth and there's balance and support. Um, you know, when you're happy and you're releasing endorphins and you're breathing and you're taking care of yourself and your mental health, then you're going to perform better physically, and you're going to show strength in um, in more incredible ways. And yeah, I've found that to be true very much.
Would you say you kind of detach yourself from the outcome and just focus on like what's in your control and like what you can do at the time? Like say it versus like a competition versus a personal project.
I think it's hard. I think my ego likes to take over a lot, and it's my personal work to keep myself in check in that regard and know that it's not always about the outcome, and that sometimes projecting something is spending weeks, months, years on one move and only getting an inch or one crimp or one tiny move higher, and that being something that you celebrate, or taking a really big trip that's completely out of your comfort zone and knowing that the routes are going to be really hard because it's not your home gym where you're climbing those, fabricated holds every day all the time. And releasing the attachment from that, from the outcome, and saying at the end of the day, like, whoa, I grew today, whether it was my heart, my breath, my, I the top of my head got a little bit higher and closer to the top of the route, or maybe I didn't get any higher at all, and I was just able to overcome the mindset of I'm not doing well enough, this isn't why I'm here, remembering the source of your joy in the sport or the activity. um, Always coming back to that kind of is your foundation.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned remembering the source of, like, why you're doing what you're doing. And we've been talking about mindset, which I think is like one of the biggest key factors when it comes to, performance, and both like your own happiness and being happy with where you got, celebrating the small wins like you suggested. And so, how do you have like a pre-ritual for like a competition to kind of get you into the mindset of whether it's to compete or to project a certain climb?
Yeah, I think I I kind of live for the adrenaline and the chaos of being in competition because it is so not my comfort zone. I am not comfortable enough with climbing to where I can walk in and just be like, yeah, I got this, ready to send it, gonna crush it. Like I totally am inspired by people that can do that, and that you know, walk in and use all of their resources and tools that they've practiced on the way. I lose all of those abilities and am just like shallow breath, nothing is working, everything is shaking. Um, but that's why I keep doing it, and that's why I keep going back, and that's why I continue to sign up for competitions because I love that challenge, and I think it can only make me a stronger person. I think it can only make me a better climber. Every time I step back up to the plate, it's like, okay, I am doing this again, and I am using resources in my body that I didn't even know that I had. And for the most part, my kids are there watching me and cheering me on, and they see me continue to challenge my strength mentally and physically. And I think that's super important. Even if I never make it up to the top of the wall or to the top hold, or I never make the podium, they are always there to tell me that they think that I am like the coolest person and the strongest mom and I have the biggest muscles and I did the greatest job. And to me, that is everything. Because I want them to persevere through things that are hard, and I want them to be resilient in their own challenges. And so I love doing that for myself and for them. And so I will probably continue to compete and to kind of make myself uncomfortable in that way. But I balance it with throughout training, taking trips to go see people that I love in areas that are awesome to climb in and just enjoying it. Um, or doing the really silly, fun, you know, not silly, but just like the really exhilarating, ways of climbing, like going out on your stand-up paddleboard and climbing up some rocks and then jumping into the water, you know, continuing to build the fun and balance it with the challenge, kind of the yin to the yang.
Yeah, and that's so great how you mentioned support, right? Like your kids supporting you, giving you all those compliments and stuff like that. And I think that's something I'd love to kind of talk about too, and hear your like personal experience and like the support and love you find in the climbing community, because that's what I've found both in my personal life and then talking to some of the other climbers is just they're like, I found a second family, and I just wondered if that was kind of your experience and you experienced that as well.
100%. 100%. I come back for the people. I come back for the lessons that I learn every time I show up in a group of climbers, whether they're paraclimbers, able bodied climbers. The climbing community is one that I wish I had found in childhood. It is one that is filled with support and empathy and compassion and incredible, like invincible energy and strength and grit. Um, and I mean, I found climbing because I went to an amputee clinic out in Colorado, and it just happened to be a climbing clinic. My dear friend Kirsty Ennis of the Kirsty Ennis Foundation, she hosts clinics out in Colorado of varying different sports for veterans, adaptive athletes. And I went out, I showed up. I showed up. I'd never climbed before. I just showed up because I wanted to meet other amputees and people who had experienced life with challenge. And I felt so isolated at that point in recovery, and I needed it. I needed it to sustain life. And so I went out, and I happened to be rock climbing with these people, and everyone's story was so different, and everyone's experience and challenges were so different, but somehow there was this focal point of connection, of um, love and support for people that were genuine strangers. And there was follow up after this event that was 3 days, where generally you would come and you would leave and be like, cool, I met some cool people, never talked to them. Like, there was so much continual connection afterwards. And it was like an unseen, unspoken, just we're all kind of in this together. And no matter where, maybe people continued to climb after that, and maybe they didn't, but we all still talk and we all still support each other and share big milestones and, you know, share what we have going on next. And it's really, it's awesome. And I found that in every time, every meetup, every clinic, every competition, it just gets better.
That's amazing. And, I would love if you wouldn't mind kind of elaborating and kind of doing a deep dive on like how important it is to have that community that has that understanding of like where you are. Because I mean, I think that's important. And we as, humans, we love our social connections.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually just talking to a friend about this. Two of my best friends now, we're actually hosting an adaptive yoga retreat this coming weekend here in my local area in Charlottesville. And one of them lives in California, and the other one lives in Minnesota. And we connected and met because of USA paraclimbing, and we were climbing at competitions, and I didn't know anything. I literally just kept showing up because I was like, I really like these people, and I'm learning things about climbing that I never knew or thought that I would learn. And at my first competition, I did not even know how to tie myself into my harness. I didn't know how to tie a figure eight knot. I mean, the belayers kind of looked at me like, should you be here? I don't know. And everyone was so nice to me. I mean, I mean, people took me under their wing and loved on me and cheered me on, and it was incredible. And so anyway, I made connection with everyone, but with these two girls in particular. And one of them, both of them are congenital amputees, and one of them is very involved or in the starting of, and just raising and breathing into life of the Lucky Finn project. And it's just really cool to me how there's community now, not only for kids with limb difference or physical difference, but also for their families, because that is where you get support. But you also get support from those families when you come into, the disabled community. Um, but if the support can start at home, or can be something that your family of origin better understands, then that can only be um, that can only be helpful for those who are living the challenge, right? And I don't know what it was like to grow up or go through elementary school or middle school with a limb difference and to learn all of these things as an adolescent. My story is that I lived 28 years with all appendages and limbs, and then, you know, came into a community that I could say, "Hey, this has nothing to do with climbing, but like, how do you tie your shoes? Do you like use something to help you, or do you just get down there with your teeth like I am right now, or like what's the story? What's the deal?" And that was everything. And now to be able to bring um, my kids and my family and my husband into those areas of support and kind of have them from an outside perspective learning and growing their sense of awareness and knowledge so that they can go out in the world and say, hey, this is how we have conversations with people that are disabled. This is how all bodies are different and awesome. And now we're in a world and a community, thank the Lord, that marketing and PR is all about inclusion and growing awareness of things like that. And that's not something that a lot of my friends who grew up with a difference had the benefit of that kind of support. And so I'm really grateful, and there's a lot of perspective in difference and in, yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I'd love to dive down a little bit too is having those conversations, right? Like bringing able-bodied into kind of that adaptive community of understanding. So, what's a good way to maybe bridge that gap?
Be in conversation, uh, be willing to learn and listen always. There's always time to be the teacher, and then there's always time to be a student. And we're never the master of everything or the knower of all things. Even as a member of the adaptive community, again, I'm newer to this community, so there's so much that I can learn, and there's so much um, that I get taught every time I'm in these spaces that keep me in check, and that then I can go and share. But also, it gives me so much perspective as to how much of my life I lived in ignorance, and that is something that I want to know and I need to know. And it doesn't mean I've done anything wrong. It just means that there's always room for growth and for holding space for other people that are humans that deserve to be treated with respect and honor and um, yeah, just held as a human being. And we're all still learning. And I think it starts again in conversation and in language, right? Our ability to speak to one another with the mindset of inclusion and honor of ancestry and lineage and learning and mistakes that have been made and things that need to be changed, we can only step forward in the right direction. And so, listening, talking, holding space, going into space with eyes wide open, hearts wide open.
Yeah, it's that, like you said, it's a mutual respect of, right? Like, it's okay to ask questions, but at the same time, do it in a respectable way and make sure that, these people, everybody deserves that dignity when you're asking those questions. It's just being mindful of how you ask that. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that because I think it's important, right? To like you said, bridging that gap's having those conversations, kind of like what we're doing right now. I'm learning so much, and it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've been hitting kind of climbing really hard in the community, which, like you, I could probably talk about it all day. But I'm really curious, now that rock climbing is in the Paralympics, you're training, and something I'd really love to talk about is you mentioned, how your kids support you and stuff like that. And then, throughout our conversation, you were mentioning that organization that helps kids with limb difference or that maybe have adaptation. So what's kind of like your future goals or maybe some aspirations you have or want to do in the future for both kind of the youth athletics and then as far as climbing, like how do you plan on giving back?
Well, there are a few organizations that I love working with that I've really come to be at home in. And I think that the networking through those organizations that are big pieces to life right now can grow kind of our reach and our stretch of where we're showing up in community and how we're supporting future communities. Um, and so again, Lucky Fin Project is it's an incredible organization that is just family oriented, but also really focused on the individual. There's so many networks of support. Every year they have one really big meetup where, hundreds, if not, I think the numbers are just growing, of people, limb different, friends, their families show up, and it's just a festival of of consciousness, of awareness, of growth. The Shriners come that are a huge support system for physical difference. Um, yeah, it's an incredible place to be, and it creates a lot of relationship and community. And then there are organizations like the Range of Motion Project, which is another one that I really love supporting. And they go into areas like Guatemala and Ecuador, and they provide prosthetic support and education and support, in building prosthetics, bringing components in that people may not have access to, and kind of bringing outreach to those communities that need support. Um, and so there, and kind of the list goes on of organizations like that, you know, when they have their major events, I go and I try to support those. But then also, I take what I learn in those spaces and I try to come back into more local spaces, like, you know, building the adaptive program in Richmond, or helping, if not, to be there as much as I can, to volunteer as much as I can, to take the community there. There are some local organizations like Sportable and Beyond Boundaries that facilitate access and awareness in all outdoor spaces for all outdoor activities and indoor activities. Um, and they really help to facilitate the climbing program at my home gym, but also they have different, activities every day of the week, whether it's rafting, archery, ropes course, fishing, so many different things where we can show up in the outdoor and learn more about inclusivity and bringing people into outdoor spaces, and making those more diverse and accessible. Um, and, again, I try to take any group of kids from my kids' schools that are willing to go. Last year, I took a third and a fourth grade class up to the local bouldering gym and just talked to them about, everybody got to climb. And then they all wanted to watch me climb because they thought it was super cool that I could climb with one hand. And then I showed them that I used both of my arms, and, that this part of my arm was really helpful for climbing for me, and I showed them how that worked, and they had lots of questions, and we just sat outside the rock gym after we climbed for an hour and ate lunch and talked about different things, all the kind of crazy cool amazing questions they had that were very logical, and that in some spaces, maybe, those questions would be kept at bay, or they would be told, hey, that's not polite to ask those questions, or hey, that's not, we don't say things about people that look different when, I think everyone has their own perspective and personal take on it. But for me, when I have a group of people that are staring at me from afar, I would so much rather them come up in a kind and compassionate way and ask me questions, because it is logical. And a lot of times when kids are kind of studying it, I kind of greet that with, oh, yeah, it does look kind of different, doesn't it? Kind of like an acknowledgement of what you're seeing and what you're looking at isn't it's not strange for you to have questions or be inquisitive about that. And I accept those willingly. And again, I think everyone has a different perspective on that. But yeah, that's my personal take on it.
Yeah, no, I thank you for educating us because that's something that it's like a fine line of approaching someone and asking questions, and is this off limits? Is that on limits? Right? Because our
Yeah,
parents may raise us a certain way, and so having you guys blatantly say what your perspective is on it, because everybody has kind of their own perspectives on what they're okay with and what they're not, and so to have you share that means a
totally.
lot, to me and especially everybody else.
For sure, absolutely.
So, are you looking forward to the Paralympics, and is that kind of one of your futuristic goals? You think
I mean, isn't it everybody's goal?
maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I am going to work as hard as I can and put in as much time as I can, and I'm going to be super proud with every step that I take and sort of every building block. But that definitely is a goal of mine for sure. I would love nothing more than to, you know, represent my country and to go and climb as hard as I can on some of the most incredible, thoughtful, sick routes ever. I would be stoked, like beyond belief. Um, and I'm also just grateful for the opportunities along the way to get to grow and climb and be strong and feel strong. And yeah, I'm psyched for the climbing disabled community in general, that athletics are coming to this level. That athletes of all varying abilities are being challenged to the peak apex of like, how far can you push this? How far can you take it? If you want to go full throttle all the way, like you can. And I think that is really, really awesome for me, for my generation, for to even be a part of that window of opportunity, but for the future.
Yeah, I'm happy to sit here and watch and follow everything, especially with the Paralympics coming up in 2028. And it was really awesome seeing climbing in the Olympics the last time, but then now that Paralympics is going to happen for you guys, like that just it's like icing on the cake.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, we were kind of talking about we've explored your indoor climbing. And so I'm very curious, what's been your favorite outdoor place to go? And do you have like a special like crag or like climbing area you like try to go to every year or?
Mm. I mean, I love going out west to climb. Outdoor climbing close to me in my area it's here, like the New River Gorge in West Virginia is pretty close. There's lots of sick places to climb up, swim up, and jump off there. Great climbing. um, of course, I love going and visiting my friends in Colorado and climbing out there. I love ice climbing in Montana. Um, that is super fun, and I love that. Such a different kind of challenge, but definitely the most incredible place I've ever climbed, and I hope to go back very, very soon. I took a trip to Majorca, Spain, and got to climb some of the most incredible, beautiful, intense places ever. Which I know for some climbers that's very, kind of an all the time. I don't know. It was just, maybe it was the views, maybe it was the food, maybe it was the company. It was an incredible trip. I've never felt so challenged. I have never been pushed so hard. I've never climbed so many days consecutively, and just like, it was my first just climb every day 10 days straight trip, and it couldn't have been better. It was awesome.
I would definitely love to hear more about that just because from my own perspective, I have not climbed internationally yet. And like my idea behind it is really just to be able to go to a place and just immerse myself in like the culture and like you mentioned food and stuff like that. And then, just the climbing's so unique and different. And I would love to hear kind of like how that um, trip went for you and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a lot of support from some local organizations that helped to get me on this trip. And there were about 10 of us climbers, and it was through a group called Ascent Climbing Trips. And there were incredible leaders, incredible climbers with impeccable skill, highest level out there. And the my fellow climbers came from all places of the world, all corners of the world. Um, we had a climber from Australia, a bunch of us from the States, someone who had lived in Spain. Like, it was awesome. Just that sort of immersion was really cool. And to get that many climbers from different backgrounds together was really fun. And then to get out on the rocks and to see everyone's different style of climbing, to learn new things. Um, I was the only climber with a physical difference, so that was really cool because I got to see super strong climbers climb outside, and then I also got to, you know, I got to, I got to learn things from them, and they learned things from me about like how I climbed and what challenges I, was kind of met with. And we did some overwater soloing, and that was really insane, like doing that with what kind of felt like one less appendage. I mean, I still used my arm, but it was just, I think no matter what, no matter how many, like, whatever you have, like, that's, it's exhilarating, and it's new and it's different, and you have this turquoise blue water underneath you that you're like, okay, no matter what, I'm going to fall into that. But like, am I going to fall properly? Like, am I going to push myself away? Do I karate kick away? What do I do in that moment of panic? Um, and then when you do it, you're like, holy, what? I just did that. And you look up at this cliff face, and you're like, wow, I climbed to the top of that. And then I jumped off the top of that. And I'm going to watch a bunch of other really bad A climbers do the same thing. And this is awesome. And then we're going to eat really good food tonight, and then we're going to do it again tomorrow. It was just, what an incredible gift, and it's not every day for me and most people. And so it was paradise. It was a beautiful place. We had amazing guides that helped us, that were local, incredible climbers. These climbers were getting up there, like, just doing the most insane routes, no ropes, like leading us up, and that was after we like scaled these like slippery rocks, like basically down in the water with our packs on to like get to the crag. It was like, I was winded and exhausted by the time we got there, and everyone's like harnessing up, challenging, getting ready. Like, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, let's do this. We're doing it. You know, yeah. You sleep the best you've ever slept because you're like, every muscle in your body is fatigued to the extreme. Um, yeah, I don't know.
No, that was incredible, and that is like I like how you mentioned that like that's not an everyday occurrence, right? But then to get to have those moments is just life changing, like you said. And I think you've just sold me and everybody else listening on the fact of they need to first, if they're not in climbing, get into climbing, and then after they get into climbing, they need to go to they need to go to Spain and do some deep water soloing, look at the water, and just climb and have a great time because that's what life is all about, is just enjoying it.
Yes, for sure. And look up ascent climb trips. They will take you all around the world to different beautiful places, no matter what your skill level, and they will facilitate an awesome trip with some great climbs. So,
Awesome. Thank you for tip about that company because that's something I'm definitely going to look into
yeah.
too. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And so, we've we always circle back to climbing, which I don't think we can help it just because we are climbers and that's just what we love. But do you have any other like hidden like secret talents or other hobbies that you really enjoy?
Well, my husband and I met in culinary school. So, I am a chef by trade, and we own a catering company, the two of us, where we do, small, intimate, high-end private events. Um, and that is definitely something that is a huge passion of mine that is kind of one of my underlying, you know, um, missions on all of my trips and on all of my adventures for climbing or for yoga is, wherever it takes me, I can find community around food and connection in that space. And yeah, I am hugely supportive and advocate for, you know, access to good quality food for all humans and just taking care of our planet in that way and loving the soil. And so that's definitely one of my hidden love languages.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, and I might not ask this question correctly, but and I'm sure you'll probably say yes, but does food and cooking, is that kind of like its own like language and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's something that you can go into any country in any socioeconomic bracket, and you will find connection and culture, and you will learn new things in food. You may not speak the language or know anything about the ingredients, but you are learning something about someone else. You are exchanging energy when you are that close to other people, when you are that close to food and ingredients. There's a vibration that's in exchange. All things are living and breathing and have soul, and I believe that to be true so much in food. And it's so important to me to fuel my body and to fuel my kids' bodies and those that I love, and everyone really, with good quality ingredients. That's what my husband and I base our whole business off of. Is yes, we're both super high level chefs and have cooked in some of the most incredible spaces, but really allowing ingredients that are quality, that are grown with love and passion for nurturing others, that, allowing them to speak for themselves. There doesn't have to be a lot of finagling or technique, just simple and beautiful, you know? Um, so I think food is a language. I think it's a source of, yeah, love and energy. And when we put good things into our body, the product of that will be more than we could ever expect. So as athletes, obviously that's high priority, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you talk about nutrition, but I think what's cool is you mentioned the community aspect that comes with food, right? Because I mean, people cook people stuff when they're going through a tragedy. You're cooking meals and celebrating when, like, you were in Spain climbing, so you have like all of these cool, like, um, experiences with food. I think that's fantastic, and you can't find anything like that, you know. And it's so cool. And then you have that memory because you're eating this amazing food and you're having these amazing experience. It just like magnifies it by that much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, personally, some of the most incredible meals that I've ever eaten were when I was basically couch ridden for what felt like a year after I lost my hand and I was pregnant. And, you know, people in my community rallied around my family and supported us by bringing us meals for months. I mean, like actually, like 6 months afterwards, people were still, restaurants, families, like the meal train was like insane. And that was so incredibly important to me because it could be a chicken broccoli casserole that was made in somebody's toaster oven, but it was like the love that was put into that and the thoughtfulness and sometimes people make a joke and be like, "Oh, well, I can't cook for you and your husband. You're you're professional chefs." And I that's embarrassing. And there was none of that. It was just like, I this is how I can love on you and your family, and this is how I want to support you. And you know, it was it so those were some of the best meals I've ever eaten in my life. And I will remember each one of them for always.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not the food per se. Like, yeah, that's great, but it's like you said, it's that support, and then that feeling to know that they're there, and that it's a way of them also being able to, one, help you out, but then they also feel good because serving others and helping others is like one of the best things you can do, and it does so much for you as a person.
Absolutely.
Well, Allie, I really appreciate your time today and coming on and talking to us. And I'm glad we got to finally connect. And it was been a pleasure meeting you and get to learn more about you. I've had a great time.
You as well, Ben. Thank you so much for being in conversation and for holding this space. And um, yeah, I really enjoyed being here today and talking with you, but I also just really enjoyed learning and listening from all the other people that you hosted.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to do this again in the future because I know we'll meet back up. And I hope to see you guys in the future because I'm looking to try to find my way to the adaptive climbing and see how I can help out when I'm finally a physical therapist. So we'll see.
Awesome. That sounds awesome. Well, we welcome you to any space and we'd love to have you. So hopefully our paths cross again.
Sure they will. Thank you.
Thanks.